Alright, so the next graph we are going to discuss is about the cumulative frequency graph. Right, so for cumulative frequency graph, generally you need to know that the x-axis, okay, is actually the upper class boundary, and also for the y-axis it will be the cumulative frequencies. Okay, so this one is your y-axis here. Okay, and this is your x-axis. Alright, so what the cumulative frequency means? Okay, cumulative frequency means that the total frequency up to a particular class, so we call it as cumulative frequency. And then usually for cumulative frequency graph, you're going to use it to estimate the median, also the quartiles, like lower quartile, upper quartile, and so on. And you also use it to estimate some values that we want to know. Okay, so we can also use it to estimate some other values. All right. Okay, so this is basically what do we have about the cumulative frequency. Okay, so we can have a look for example 9. Alright, so this is the data given. So the x-axis will be the weight, the G is weight, and then weight in gram, and then the y-axis, I shouldn't say y-axis, they give you also the frequency. Okay, so first they want you to construct a cumulative frequency table. So cumulative frequency table and as shown here, right, and draw a cumulative frequency graph. Okay, so when you want to get the value for all the cumulative frequency table, generally it's like that. Again, you need to have class boundary. You need to have also cumulative frequency. Okay, so let's start with the class boundary first. Alright, so do you still remember how we check whether do you need to do any adjustment or not for the class boundary? Okay, so you look at the upper value for the first class and also compare it with the lower value for the next class. Okay, is there any gap between these two numbers? Yes, right. Okay, so you have to do the adjustment. So to do the adjustment means that minus 0.5 for all the lower value, plus 0.5 for all the upper value. All right, and then for this example, because I need an extra space here, so maybe I'll put a small space in front and I leave it blank first. Okay, so for the first class boundary will be 59.5 after you adjust it to 69.5. And then you will have 69.5 to 74.5, 74.5 and 79.5. Then it, sorry, it's 7.5, 74, oh no, because 80, right? So 80 minus 0.5, you should have 79.5 to 84.5. And also 84.5 to 89.5. Okay, so after you do the adjustment and you double check again, all the lower class boundary and the next, all the upper class boundary and the next lower class boundary will have the same value. Okay, all right, so because when you are drawing the cumulative frequency graph, we need the upper class boundaries as our x-axis, x coordinate, all right, the upper class boundary. Therefore, usually I will write out, so which is the upper class boundary? So for the first class here, it will be 69.5. 69.5 will be the upper class boundary, right? So usually for me, I'll write a smaller sign in front. So later I will let you know why do I need to write out the smaller sign in front here. So similar happened to this one. Second class is smaller than 74.5. Then followed by 79.5 and so on. Okay, so just now I mentioned that we need a first class here, right? Okay, all right, so for the first class here, we need to add on another x coordinate in front, upper class boundary, which is smaller than 59.5. So how I know that it's 59.5? You take the lower class boundary for the first class that you have. Okay, all right, then let's start with the cumulative frequency. So for cumulative frequency, for the first class, you follow the frequency that we have, which is 30. Okay, then for the second class, the cumulative frequency is you take the first frequency add the second frequency. So you're having 120. And you add on another one, which is 250, and so on. So if you continue further, you'll have until 500. Okay, so how about the first cumulative frequency? It is always equal to 0. Okay, so we need to have this first class here is because of the cumulative frequency have to start from 0 for the ones. Okay, so you have to make sure that you have the value. Okay, you created one extra cumulative frequency in front, and you have to ensure that it starts from 0. All right, so after you are done with all the data already, then maybe you need to continue, okay, to draw the graph. Okay, so I make it smaller so they can see what I'm drawing here. All right. So my smallest value should start from 59.5, and the largest value will be 89.5 for x-axis. Okay, so what am I going to do now is maybe I will start from here. All right, and then okay, maybe I start from the bottom. Okay, I will label this as 59.5. Then this one will be 69. Then 79.5 and also 89.5. Okay, so for the x-axis here, you can label it as weight in gram, or you can label it as upper class boundary. Okay, then for the y-axis, I'm having 100, 200, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so before I plot anything, I will write out the label. It is actually the cumulative frequency. Okay, so once I'm done with all the labeling already, then I will start plotting all the points. Okay, so the first point is x-axis 59.5 and the value of y is equal to 0. So this is the point that you have. Okay, then followed by next one, 69.5, you're having 30. So 69.5, 30. Okay, 74.5 is 120. So 74.5 will be the center, the middle between 69.5 and 79.5. So you're having 120 here. Then 79.5, you're having 250. Then 84.5. So 84.5, you're having 460. And after that, 89.5, you're having 500. Okay, so after you plot all the points, then you try to join them together. Okay, so please make sure that you join it smoothly. That path show the points. Okay, so this is how your cumulative frequency graph look like. Okay, all right. So just to make sure that you try to join the curve as smooth as possible. All right, because in exam we tend to use all the graph here to try and answer the question later. So you can try to graph as smooth as possible. That's the first thing. And if let's say in exam, right, you feel that your hand is shivering and you cannot draw a proper graph, then what you need to do is that you can actually join all the points by using ruler. So that means you are allowed to draw all the straight line. That means between the points. So as an example, you can use ruler to join the point like that, straight line, straight line, straight line, and so on. Okay, so you're allowed to do so. Okay, all right. So this is our graph, our cumulative frequency graph, how our cumulative graph look like. Okay, so usually after you draw the graph in the exam, right, they will actually ask you to answer some questions from the graph. They want you to estimate some value from the graph. Okay, so let's have a look at how are we going to estimate all the value from the graph. Okay, so before that, before you estimate the value from the graph, there's something very important that you need to remember always. All right, so when you are having the cumulative frequency graph, right, why I ought to write out the smaller sign here? Generally, you need to know that for this pair of data, the value here, what does it mean? It means that there are 30 components. Weight less than 69.5. Okay, so what I want to emphasize here is the word less than. Okay, so that means in the cumulative frequency graph, actually all the values that you get from the cumulative frequency graph later, they actually meant for less than. Okay, so if any particular question they ask you to get the value for more than 69.5, then you do some adjustment to get the less than answer. You get what I say or not? So all the values that you estimate from the cumulative frequency graph, generally they are telling you the answer about the less than value, not the more than value. Okay, so we can continue with example 2. Okay, so if you have a look for example 2, they say components that weigh less than 64.5 or more than 87.5 were rejected. Okay, and they want you to calculate the percentage of accepted component. Okay, so we focus on the rejected item first. So we are having two groups of components that will be rejected. The first one is less than 64.5. Another group will be more than 87.5. Okay, so for less than 64.5, you can estimate the value from the graph. So where's your 64.5? You scroll down to your graph. Okay, so here is 64.5. Okay, then you try to draw a straight line to touch the curve that you draw, and then you try to reflect it to the left hand side. Okay, so from the value here, this value that I get is a 10. Okay, from my graph. Okay, so I will write out my steps here. The item less than 64.5 gram. I have how many components? I have 10 components. Okay, so I know that I have 10 to be rejected already. And now they want to know that how many of the item that is more than 87.5 gram to be rejected. Okay, so for more than 87.5, again, to estimate the value, you need to look for the 87.5. So in the middle here is 84, 85, 86, 87. So this is 87.5. So you do the same thing. From the 87.5, you draw a line up and try to touch the curve that you draw. Okay, and then maybe you will get a value also here. Okay, so from the graph that I draw, if I look at this value, it is 490. Okay, so this 495, it is actually less than 87.5. It is not more than, because from the graph, all the value that we get is about less than. So 495 means there are 495 components less than 87.5 gram. But in my calculation, I need more than 87.5 gram, right? So what you need to do is you have to take 500 minus the answer that you get, and it is equals to 5. So 5 components. Okay, so can you see that you have to take the total minus the answer that you get, because when you are looking for more than 87.5, right, the value in the graph only give you less than 87.5 gram, the value, the component. Therefore, to know how many of them will be rejected, you need to take the total minus the 495. So this is something important to me. I think it's quite important, because you need to know when you get any value from the cumulative frequency graph, the answer that they give you is actually the smaller than one, the smaller than value. Okay, right. So these are the components that I want to reject. Okay, so what is the percentage of accepted component? Okay, so this one based on common sense. There's no special knowledge that you need to know. Okay, so for the accepted component percentage is, you need to take 500 minus 10 minus 5, because 10 and 5 are the number of components that you reject, right? So you have to minus them and then divided by 500 and multiply with 100%, because they're asking for percentage. Therefore, if you calculate correctly, what is the answer that you get? Okay, so you may take 500 minus 10 minus 5 divided by 500, then multiply 100%. So you have 97% accepted. Okay, so after you do your calculation, right, maybe some of you ask me, like, hey, teacher, actually I didn't get the answer like what you get. You get some different value here. So maybe for 10, instead of 10, maybe you get 15 or 5. Then for this one, instead of 5, maybe you get 10 or 5, or maybe 15. All right, so what I want to say is like, no need to worry about all the values here, but you just need to make sure that your graph, you draw it correctly. Okay, if your graph draw it correctly, the value that you get will not be too far away, okay, from the original answer. Okay, so no need to worry about it. So we will have slight difference, okay, between all the answer from students to students. So no need to worry because of our graph that we draw, right? It's quite different actually. Okay, so no need to worry if you didn't get 97. If you get 96, 95, okay, even 99, all we will accept it also as long as your graph is correct, and also when you read the value, the answer, the way that you read the value is correct. Okay. So generally, this is what you have for a cumulative frequency graph. So besides knowing how to draw, you also need to know how to use it to estimate the value and answer the question. Okay. All right. So for the next example, I would like to leave it for you to try on your own. Okay. Example 10. Okay. So please attempt the question. All right. And after that, they want you to estimate the number of trains that is less late for more than 8 minutes. So this one you can do yourself and complete it. I will actually upload the answer later after this video. Alright, so you can look for the answer file after the video. But please make sure that you try it out on your own first. Okay? And then for part number 2, right? For part number 1, they ask you to explain what is the meaning of negative 2 and 0. You use your own sentence and words, try to write out the meaning first and see whether you get the answer correct or not. Right? So please complete example 10 before you check for the final answer. Alright, so this is what we want to discuss for this video. Next video, we are going to do more calculation part, like how are you going to continue with the calculation for mean, median, mode, and everything. Alright,